Hey, this is Evan Mark Katz, dating and relationship coach for smart, strong, successful women, your personal trainer for love. Welcome back to the Love You podcast. I am excited. So much to share today, so much on my mind, such a good mood. And I'm hoping to spread some positive energy into your life this week by offering you a really challenging take about marriage. And I don't even know why it's a challenging take. I gotta admit, I don't even understand the world these days. Today's topic is it taboo to want marriage on dating apps? Before we get to that, if you haven't already, please subscribe on Apple. Please subscribe on Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a positive review. Makes a difference, shares us in the algorithm, makes us more visible so we can make a bigger impact on the world. And tell a friend if you enjoy this podcast. The nice part is that they're short. It's like what, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. It's enough time you can walk your dog and listen to a podcast and learn something. Without further ado, some statistics that I just read this morning. That may surprise you, may not surprise you if you're up on this topic. Marriage rates among college educated women have been rock steady at around 70% for decades, at least since World War II. The decline in marriage rates has been among women without a BA. Women with college degrees continue to marry at high rates, in part because of the continued willingness among 1/5 of them to marry down in terms of education, which is to say, only 1/3 of people have college educations, 2/3 of people don't. So 1/5 of married women marry men without college educations, and women with a degree are willing to marry men without one as long as they're making decent money. None of this surprises me, but I think it's worth it to share it. The death of marriage has been highly exaggerated. And that brings me to this conversation that I had with my client. We'll call her Brianna. And it was about her Hinge profile. And I wear this candidly. I dated 300 people online from 25 to 35. I am now 52. I have been married for over 16 years. I have never been on a dating app. I've been coaching women on dating apps for a decade, but I've never been on one. So I wouldn't say take whatever I say with a grain of salt, but I know that it's very different being a 52-year-old married man and being a 35-year-old single woman. So I'm kind of bring that to the surface and acknowledge that in everything that I'm saying. And I recognize that I might have blind spots, and that's why I talk about it here. I try to share what I know, and you could take it or leave it. You don't have to agree with everything I say. So this conversation was a really confusing conversation because apparently, if you go on to onto Hinge, there there's very, very little real estate. There's very little opportunity to say anything about yourself. A few standard issue buttons. And one of the buttons that you could click is monogamy or non-monogamy, right? Monogamy or non-monogamy were the choices she was getting. And again, I'm not getting onto Hinge as a married man to explore this. So I know there's more nuance to it. But I was like, is that really as high as it goes? Monogamy? I said, what about marriage and kids? She goes, you'd have to write that in. You'd have to like come up with the prompt for this marriage and kids thing, which is generally considered pretty popular. I said, so why don't you write that in? She goes, it looks needy and desperate. I said, but that's what you want. You want marriage and kids. Why would it be needy and desperate to declare that you want marriage and kids? Why would you advertise for anything other than what you want? If you wanted a job with a six-figure salary, you don't say you're willing to work for 45 grand a year and then complain later that you're not making enough because you advertise that you'd be willing to accept a job for 45 grand a year. She says, Evan, nobody does it. I said, again, this is my ignorance. Nobody does it. I said, what if a guy did it? If you're a woman who's looking for a man and your goal is marriage and children, and you see a guy who says marriage and children, would you think less of him? She goes, well, I mean, if he was cute, it would be okay. But if he wasn't cute, I'd find it a bit kind of needy and thirsty. I said, so nobody can admit what they want anymore? Isn't that kind of exhausting for nobody to tell the truth about what they want? Right? Because I'm just being me now, and I'm putting on the Evan hat again. If I'm a guy and I want marriage, and I always wanted to get married, even when I was in my player days, I always really wanted to be married and be a dad. I wouldn't find it scary to declare that. You could talk to me on a first date, second date, third date. No compunction about telling you that I admired my dad. I want to be a little league coach one day. Like that's always been part of the plan. I think I would find it refreshing if someone said that that was their goal because it made it really clear that we're on sort of the same page. Our intentions are out there and there's nothing to be afraid of. So if you're a super religious person and Jesus is the center of your universe, it would kind of make sense to share that you might want someone else who shares your faith journey and is on board with that. Would it scare some people off? Sure. But if that's your thing, I wouldn't worry too much about scaring someone off who sees the world through the same light. So I'm basically declaring here that I fail to see how anyone benefits from this level of ambiguity and intentional obscurity. So wouldn't it be really easy for you to say monogamy for my client Brianna, click the monogamy button, for the guy to be cool, I also want monogamy. And then he becomes a perfectly good monogamous boyfriend who has no intention of cheating on her. And at some point, when she's thinking, I really want this to escalate to a proposal, marriage, and kids, he says, what? I was completely upfront. I want monogamy. We have a monogamous relationship. Why would I mess with that? Doesn't that seem like a very, very likely outcome, like a coin flip level likely outcome? And my client admitted, yes, it is. So, so to me, this is all a little immature. I don't know if this is where our society evolved to, that we can no longer say the things that we want under the guise that it appears needy. Admitting that you have needs is now needy. I think this is why women are struggling in relationships, is they're trying so hard to act like they don't what they want, trying to be the cool girl. Oh, sure. We'll just have sex casually, and I'm sure you're going to eventually fall in love with me, and that's how you get into a situationship. It's because you basically agree to terms that you don't want, and then you're surprised you can't renegotiate the terms down the road. This seems to be almost sort of like an objectively terrible idea because you're saying one thing and doing another. Now, my client, I spoke to her yesterday. She landed on, and again, I don't know if she wrote this in or if there was an actual button for it. The word she put was life partner, life partner. So Hinge, if you're listening, I do not understand how you don't have a button for marriage or marriage and children. Like that should be there. Like that is that is sort of a no-brainer. It's not terribly aggressive. What used to be known as normie behavior. I don't judge anybody who does not want marriage and children. If you want to be single, if you want to have monogamy without marriage, that's perfectly fine for you. But the idea that we have to make it so impossible for people who actually want marriage to admit that they want marriage under the idea that this is somehow shameful, I think it's just backwards. So to me, monogamy, using my finger quotes now, like exclusivity, back in finger quotes, is a stupid legal loophole that men use to have stable relationships where they get to have regular sex that are going nowhere, all because women are not strong enough to either state their intentions or set a boundary at the beginning of the relationship and declare what they want. It's like you want the steak and they give you the chicken and you're like, okay, I'll eat this chicken. Maybe one day it'll turn into a steak. So I know, and I've stated, I know I'm being redundant at this point. I'm 52, married 16 years, never on a dating app. But for the life of me, I can't understand why not stating what you want is going to be more effective than stating what you want. You're not asking for a ring on the first date. You're not interrogating him as to whether he's going to be a good father. You're just basically stating that anyone who contacts you should ostensibly be okay with marriage and children in the future, so that when you are dating, when you do finally meet, you can explore that journey together without any confusion or misunderstanding about each other's intentions and some surprise heartbreak because she's afraid to speak her mind. So I know I'm right about this, but please tell me why I'm wrong. Put it in the comments on YouTube. Tell me what I'm missing about this. Would you really, if you are a marriage-minded woman, would you penalize a guy for saying he wanted to be married and start a family? when you also want to get married and start a family, your comments are sincerely greatly appreciated, because this is one thing I genuinely don't understand. It just seems to me that a lot of people, including a good number of my clients, right, who are 45, 55, 65, are afraid of the word marriage, right, because they had a bad marriage and they have friends who are in bad marriages and they had an ugly divorce. So they become afraid of the word marriage and the institution of marriage when their experience with marriage is literally limited to one guy, maybe two guys, right? And that guy has now ruined marriage, the whole institution of marriage for them. And it's a sample size of one. I'm done with marriage, right? I ate a bad meal. I'm going on a hunger strike. That's what that says to me. So then you dig deep and you talk to people on the phone like I do. I'm on Zoom for probably too many hours a day, 6, 7 hours of Zoom calls in the past 2 days, talking to women, listening to women. And then you ask them what they want for their future. What do you want in 6 months? What do you want in 3 years? And tell me about your life. It sounds an awful lot like marriage. So whether you want a long-term relationship or a civil union or a marriage, I'm letting you know you can have it. It can be yours. It doesn't have to be some top-down, old school patriarchal thing, whatever you associate with marriage. It can be whatever you want it to be. If you haven't found that thing, if you haven't found your person, I can show you how to get it. My name is Evan Marc Katz. This is the Love You Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple, Spotify, leave us a positive review. I love you. I appreciate you. I thank you for being part of this podcast, and I look forward to seeing you on the next podcast. Talk to you soon.